Hey, fellow impactors. Welcome to the podcast that gives you a little glimpse into how a little collision can impact us into motion. This is Stories of Impact with Shaa Ciku. That's me, and also known as SN1. In today's episode, we will sit down with a fellow impactor. Our guest is a creator, and Huku, we really love creators. He's an event curator, he's a lover, he's a painter, a drawer, a pianist, a treasure maker, and so much more. He's also a burst of sunshine, I must say. You can find his work on Instagram at Brian Kivuti, and I'd just like to welcome Brian to our little community of impactors. So let me give them a little bit of background as to why you're here and how we met and all of that. Brian is here today because he impacted me, as everybody on this podcast is. I first met Brian last year, which was in 2022, at a community event called Free Mind Sessions. And then from there, we hung out a few more times at something he was doing for creatives called the Inspiration Circle. So before this, I already knew of his existence. I don't know if he knows this, because I wanted to be a jeweler once upon a time, and that's one of the things he does. That's one of the treasures he makes. So I'd been following him for a while, and I really love his work. But once I met him, I was like, wow. Even if our interaction was so brief, I was left smiling because he carries a little bit of sunshine every single place he goes. Today we have him to talk about looking for the sunshine and trying to find it even when you're in a position where it looks a bit dark, when the clouds have cast a shadow, when the sunshine is just seeming out of reach. You know what I mean? When you're in the winter of life, if I can call it that.
Dark night of the soul.
The dark night of the soul, yes. So would you do us the honor of sharing a little bit of this sunshine with us? Brian, Kivuti, please tell us your story. We can start with, where does your story with your emotions, and where do you first remember experiencing maybe a big emotion or something very important emotionally in your life?
Man, it's interesting. I was just thinking just now when I zoned out, I was just thinking about memory and about how memory can be quite fleeting in the way it comes in like a tide, or like it's almost as though you're in ocean currents and you find yourself in different sections of this particular sea, and the currents kind of sweep you on. And sometimes it feels like you're in the same place, but you really aren't, because when you're in the sea, it's very hard to tell if you're in a different location. If you were to ask me this same question now, and you asked me a year ago or 3 months ago about the memories from my childhood, like different memories, a different memory constellation is what would appear. And it feels like I'm on this large sea of my being, and depending on where I am, this constellation of memories is what appears, you know? So like right now, like if you ask me about early childhood memories, a really interesting, a strange one is one that is coming to mind. It's based on death and desire. And so my mom used to play this Brenda Fassie album when we were driving up country in the 90s. Me sat in the back seat with my brothers and maybe the aunt. And I remember this one time when we were driving through, I think it was Moya, or getting into Ambo, it was going towards Moya. And it was nighttime, and then the song, "Soon and very soon, we are going to see the king." And then I just remember thinking to myself how odd it is with Christianity that you look forward to death, and it feels so jubilant. It is a very particular feeling. And I remember this complex mix of the morbidity of it all, and then this coldness of death, and then mixed with like a warm infusion of hope and this sense of the unknown, which was like an umami of unknown, of the unknown, I don't know, sometimes it's easier to describe emotions as flavors, and it was such an interesting concoction that came as a mood, as a feeling, as a sensation. That was at once a dread of death, but at the same time I'm looking forward to, and then an unknown, and then wondering about heaven, and I'm wondering about my expiration, and about a sense of like the finality of it all, and the fleetingness of the now. it all just kind of blended into this really strong, palpable sensation that the best way I can describe it was like a flavor that remained in my head. And that was a strong one. And it came like numerous times. And once it came the first time, then I could recognize it every other time it would come. And I would always associate it specifically with mortality and hope and the idea of afterlives.
At this point, had you, like, when that...
I was probably 8.
You were like 8. Had you already experienced like a significant death in your life?
Yeah, a school teacher of ours who I really liked. One of the only people I've ever cried for who died. Yeah, it was really nice. Got my name though.
But the emotion mattered, and she created an impact in your life because you still remember her and you remember experiencing her loss.
You have to go further back. Probably one of the earliest memories is when I was 5 and I had this birthday cake which had like a doll on it. And I just remember the sense of wonder and mystery. It was like wonder, first of all, with a doll on the cake. And then the wonder extended to the texture. I remember a strong sensation of texture and the emotions of excitement. And then intrigue. And then more excitement. And then a calm sense of feeling loved. And then it's all mixed with this texture of cream and the plastic of a doll and the plastic of the ball it was holding and then the colors infused. So the memory is like, the emotion is both the excitement of the day, the feeling of warmth, of care, and the textures of the cake and the doll all kind of combined together.
That's beautiful. I genuinely love how you like express yourself, because like I don't think I would be able to like just capture my emotions that clearly, like in that sense. You get what I mean? Especially some from way back when, because you've explained it in a way where I can see it, I can visualize it, I can almost feel. I can almost feel what you're saying, and I guess maybe that's a bit of the creativity in you coming out in that sense. That's really beautiful.
I don't know if it's the creativity, but it's like, it's interesting. Lately, I've been wondering about these stories that we tell ourselves and the modality of these stories. It's I was telling a friend this week is that we tell ourselves particular stories about ourselves for long enough that we get used to those particular images and those narratives. And it's not just the narrative of the said story. It's the way I'm telling you about the memory. The memory wasn't just the thought of what happened, but how texture and sound and smell and all these things come together to give a sample of what it was like to be there. And then a sample of soon and very soon. And the smell of this Prado in the back seat. It's not Prado. You know those old car smells, and like the dust outside, and the moon, which was really bright, and the smell of my family all in the car and doing a long road trip, and the thought of death and the thought of life and Christian. All these things that's all coming together, then it just gives a blended texture. As I saying, a sample. So now I think what I was interested in recently is the sample we create of ourselves. This collection of stories and images in our head of our outfits and friends and emotions and different snippets of lovers and how they made us feel, and different family members and triumphs and successes, failures, and the ones which you immediately pick out, and how they kind of blend together to create this particular narrative that we have in our head. But we get so used to it. And sometimes it seems so complicated a flavor, we don't imagine that we could be something else, That even the same ingredients, the same flavors combined in a different way could tell a very different sample, a very different impression of ourselves and where we're going and how we are and how okay we can be with this particular moment. You know what I mean?
I hear you. It can shift ever so slightly and create a totally different...
You forget another ingredient that is part of who you are and part of your history. Because you forget it, then the sensation, the flavor of what you're like now is different. So I think, in short, is like, how different could I be if I decided the story was different, if the flavor was different, Because sometimes it's not necessarily a story, it's just an awareness,
It is. And like in that moment, like when you're in the back of this car,
Mm.
did you ever like of course you were much younger, so you didn't have been able to express yourself maybe as clearly. But did you ever ask like maybe your mom, why are people so happy to die?
I probably did.
Yeah.
I was always outspoken.
Because this is not adding up in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like, and then I'd always think of like, you know, funerals in shags is a very particular sensation I tend to get about death that is hard to, that's why I like the word sensation. It's hard to fully explain, like, but it's easier when you start putting together all the different ingredients. Yeah. You know, you start talking about like the, you know, the taste of basil in like a pasta dish, you know, and you start describing how nutty the cheese was, and like, and it's so much easier to be able to get into the sensation of it, because it fascinated me not so much about the way Christians look forward to death. That was just a part of it, but it was the whole sensation that it kind of created within me, that excitement, and the curiosity of that weird excitement around it, and putting together these very, very dark and bright sensations together of death and excitement, are very particular flavors of that. And it's like, and then realizing how common it is and how normal it is, within this particular context, you know? I'm also wondering if my mother feels the same thing as I'm feeling, or if she's actually interpreting it differently.
First of all, I think it's a really good thing that you even express yourself in this way, because I don't know, when you do therapy, I don't know if you've ever done therapy and been given a feelings chart.
A feelings chart?
Like, so my therapist, when I started therapy, gave me a feelings chart, and it just had different faces on it, and it says, this is anxious, this is you're feeling bemused, this is like just different things, just that I'm able to better express myself. But I think even like outside of that feelings chart, another way somebody could think about it is what you're saying, the different ingredients that make up this feeling. I'm just thinking about it for like the people listening, like maybe it can be a tool someone can use in their own lives to be able to express themselves better.
I think I started doing that subconsciously. I've never used a feelings chart, but I think I tend to launch very deeply into explaining or describing how I feel. I think I'm in a very, very bad state if I'm not able to do that. I think that has been growing more recently. The idea of like nuance. I think it's become, the question of what it looks like to be more present within myself has been growing in recent years. And sometimes when you're looking at emotions, especially difficult emotions, it's easier to feel them in their compartments, in the flavors that build them up, as opposed to immediately feeling them through thinking, through the parts that connect to your mind, and immediately start telling stories, you know? I find the heart lends more to flavor than it does to thought, like an openness to it, When you open up to thought, the thought of feeling, it can explode too loudly into stories about this, about that, and whatnot. It's the same with people sometimes. It's if you kind of lean into what they feel like as opposed to what you think.
I hear what you mean. I'm interested in knowing, so as you've grown, you're filling up a bit more of that seat in the back of the car as you grow up. Now maybe you're a teenager, maybe you're a young adult, whatever. How has your relationship with your heart, your soul, your mind transformed, like from when you're a child to your youth to now?
It's gone through many different phases. And right now I think there's a transition that's happening, but I'm not entirely sure what that transition actually looks like. But I don't think most of us know what the transition is actually doing until you're really through it. I think I've always been an emotional child and going to an adult. I think quite connected to both my joy and the sadness and the sadder parts. I think most of my childhood, though most of it is quite blank in memory, was generally mostly quite happy. I've always had like an ecclesiastical leaning. So that for both the religious and the spiritual, and that of fantasy as well. But I think that aspect has always been, if I were to re-describe it now, an interest in how the tangible can be connected to the intangible. And the intangible is not just religious, and that's why I use the word fantasy. It's the world of the internal, and then the structures we create to be able to connect us to that internal world. You know, I think spirituality does that very well. We can be able to tell many stories from many different directions that can lead us to very similar places. They can lead us to very deep journeys, or can also lead us to very destructive journeys as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's always been an interest in what that actually looks and feels like. Yeah. How I can tell myself a very particular story or believe a particular story, and how that can completely change the way I feel and see the way I connect with myself and how open and closed I get. Now, I think the bigger question is the older I got, the more intentionally I was doing it. Yeah. Maybe less believing directly in the story and more believing in what the story does. Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's reminding me of, I'm really trying to reach this thing that I read. You talked about how creation it's not about this thing that I've made. It's not about this jacket that I'm wearing. It's more so what this creator was thinking through, was going through in the moment.
I think both are true.
Yeah.
You can be in a mindset whereby the jacket, the object itself, casts a spell that it's meant to cast, and then you just fall into it. Yeah. You can be in a situation, the spell being the combination of the fabric, the patterns, and everything else, the given time frame and the fashion sense of the time. All of this are small pieces and flavors that come to create this sample, this texture that then combine with you. And you can just see a jacket and you don't really know why, but you love it. But then you fall for the spell of it, and then it looks good on you. And then you become part of the spell when you're now connected with it. And you're in this outfit and you're like looking so dope, and you're like flaunting it and everything else. And sometimes you're not part of the spell because that other day you're not feeling this outfit. It's not really working with you, you don't really know how to express it with yourself.
Yeah.
But then there's other times maybe that you can be able to see through the spell, and you start seeing what it actually does. You start thinking maybe not about the object, but about what the object does. Not about the jacket, but about maybe how today you're feeling a little bit excited and you want to augment it that way, or you're feeling a little bit low and you want to augment your mood that way. And you're very aware of the jacket as an object and the different elements of the spell that it creates, but now you're looking at what it's impacting, what it's actually lending you, and you're much more aware of the very specific aspects, and then you're using that. Yeah, does it make sense what I'm describing?
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the duality of both things. Both things can be true.
I think there's probably another level, but I'm not entirely sure how to describe it. I'm not fully aware of it. But I think the best thing about objects is when the spell is effective and you're like caught up with it, and even better when you're able to see beyond the spell and play with the ingredients. Yeah.
What are some objects that bring you joy?
This ring.
Yeah.
Is one. This jumpsuit is another.
Yeah.
This book, which I give much to show you, is one that brought me joy. I got it on the weekend, and I was like excited, and I'm going through it with a few friends. Yeah. So this one, I like it because it's not just a book, but what the book represents, and I see it as a spiritual tool, and a tool that I'm very, very excited about, and excited to explore what the tool can be like and what it can do, particularly for my heart and for my experience.
Yeah.
But I think that is a good example whereby if it was about the object, it would be the difference between the object and when you see beyond the object and you start seeing what it's actually imparting. The fact that my excitement for this is much more about what it is as a tool for me, and the fact that I'm very aware of the different elements of it as a tool. Yeah. So then the object, this book, then becomes a representation of that, but it's still an awareness of it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I like that. So
Brené Brown, Atlas of the Heart.
Atlas of the Heart, Brené Brown. I'm curious, when, let's say you're in high school, were you expressing yourself creatively, or were you just creating because You get what I mean? Did you notice the connection there?
High school, it was a combination of, so as a kid, I'd create simply because I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'd have an idea and I'd see materials and I'll just sit down and maybe spending an afternoon gluing these things together and just drawing or painting and then doing it just simply because I wanted to. And then reveling in the process of it, enjoying that and reveling in the result. Drawing a picture of one of our school assistant, teacher's assistants, and then with her and, what's her name? My friend Jambi and Margaret, her name was Margaret. And then doing a portrait of her and my friend Jambi sat together. And then that was one of my strong memories. That's when I was in class 5. Yeah. And I just really loved the experience of that, the fact that she agreed to sit down for me, and then the process of experiencing this whole thing unfolding, and then seeing how nicely it was unfolding, and then seeing how much better I've gotten at drawing, and then her having so much joy in it, and me having joy in it, and then giving her the gift, which she then showed it to me years later when I bumped into her years later. Yeah, she told me about it. Yeah. She's like, I still have it. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Wow.
Or like, it's weird, like, I think it was like a Saturday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon or school holiday where I had this palette and then dried flowers, and I started like mixing them together. I don't think the result was as nice, but the memory, it was okay, but the memory of the process of making it was so freaking nice, and I had such a nice time. And the feeling when it was done. So it changed from then as a kid to the joy kind of getting more complicated when I was a teenager. So it was a mix of actual pleasure now when I'm being introduced to things like photography and whatnot, whereby it's just a natural flow of expression, to it being a coping mechanism to bullying. So then when I started feeling left out or just outright bullied, or these aspects of not feeling all right with the world and with myself and with people, particularly that insecurity that then comes of, am I good enough? I started using it as an armor for my adequacy. Yeah, it's like the more impressive I can be as an artist, the more this can be my shield for my sense of inadequacy. Yeah, the more amazing I can be with the piano, then this can be a symbol that can be a shield against my sense of inadequacy. You know, I think going to my adult years has been, part of it has also been a process of disentangling that. The need to use art or creativity in general as some kind of symbol for my sense of self-worth. Because I think it can still be connected to my sense of self-worth, but when it's in its best sense, it's more of a detached sense of pleasure, where I can appreciate myself in this sense of expression, but I'm not so tied to it that if it is threatened, then I am threatened. Do you know what I mean? If it's not good enough in my eyes, then it means I'm not good enough. Yeah. So in its best sense, it can be something that is edifying, that is more of a resonance of my joy, that is not attached to it.
I hear what you're saying, because I feel like, I know I've told you this, I don't know if I've told you this part, but I know you know I went through depression some time ago, like about a year ago now. And I think it wasn't the only thing, but one of the huge driving forces was I'd always been such a good student, right? I'd always had really good grades, and then partially because of said depression and partially because of other things going on in my life, my grades just started to go down. And I was like, what the heck is happening? And all these people are expecting me to maintain the same thing. And I think I'd connected and like placed a lot of my value in how well I was doing in school. And I didn't realize it at that point in time. And if I was not doing well in school, then this is not Aisha. This is not the Aisha that people know. You know what I mean? And I know this is about education, but I feel like it's kind of the same thing, that you shouldn't place your value in anything
it's so much easier said than done. Because once you start placing yourself in that value, that disentanglement, that detachment, that disentangling, it is a whole other process. It's a worthwhile process. It's a process. Yeah. Because then it comes so core to your sense of worth, your sense of value, and that's not something that it can change quickly, but to do it consciously, it's interesting engaging in that process, because I think that's what I've been doing through a lot of my 20s to particularly late 20s going into my 30s. Yeah. Yeah, it's because first of all, it takes that awareness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then simply because you're aware doesn't mean that the thing has changed. Yeah. You can still feel low and then see the insecurity and then know where the insecurity is coming from. Yeah. But then changing that pattern, first of all, requires that awareness, but then it now requires that sense of intentionality of then shifting the patterns by moving to a different direction. Yeah. Because I think part of what I've been learning is that just because you're aware of the security, just because the insecurity is there, doesn't mean that those original joys, those clear joys aren't still there. And it's, I think, a process of them gravitating back to those joys, and then reconnecting with them on a much more purposeful, intentional way. And you do it more often, and then you start gravitating towards them. It's like, I think it's this suffering-forced loop, that the more you start experiencing a sense of safety around certain patterns, around things around areas that you feel unsafe, the more you start latching onto them. You felt safe when you performed really well in school, and it gave you the sense of that you have a place in the world, that you're going to be treated a certain way by your parents, and it's always going to give you a sense of certainty around your future, whether it be you're going to go to university and this and that. I think it's then taking these places where you feel safe, where you feel secure, and then attaching them to a new place. Yeah. But it can only be attached to a thing that actually makes you feel that way or tricks you into thinking that way. Tricks you into thinking that way is how maybe I trick myself into thinking getting absolutely shit-faced on a bender is going to make me feel safe, because it makes me feel like, oh, excited. And it makes me feel like I'm around people who are like super dope and everything else. But then it starts creating maybe a pattern in my mind of safety or connection around these areas. Now that when I feel particularly low, when I feel particularly lost, that I now seek that out, whether it's actually helping or not. It's not to say that the bender is bad, but to say that I created a pattern within myself that then seeks that when the insecurity kicks in. Yeah.
What are some ways you feel like you're, or places?
Or binge watching series is another one. That's very easy to say. It's that safety cocoon of the bed, or your sofa.
That's me.
And then you're feeling low. And then you create a pattern very easily that says, do you see how safe you feel with this particular threat around the world? And then you come here and then, if you watch, another 16 more hours, you'll be good.
You'll be fine.
Leave this space.
That I feel like is something I definitely indulge in myself. But I'm curious to know, what are some healthy ways you think you are able to, maybe not all the time, but sometimes you're like, okay, this is a better way for me to seek out this safety. What are some of those things that you find yourself doing?
The better one now I've been introducing within myself or nurturing is, I'm going to use two different words. So the better way it can be understood, why you immediately say that people understand, is meditation. And it's great. But one of the things recently that it was changed into, shifted the word, is listening to silence, listening to stillness. What I put it that way is, I say I meditate, but when a lot of the times I'll say, let me sit and meditate, it becomes something that I'm doing, something that I'm always trying to engage to save myself from this terrible feeling. And then if it doesn't save me from the terrible feeling, then it has failed, and then I lose faith in it. But when I reframe it as listening to stillness and listening, being here with myself, it's certainly not come and sit and meditate, but to come and sit and just create time to be here with me, with what I'm thinking, and also the silence behind what I'm thinking. Because the more you kind of with yourself in that quietness, you start to notice that there's a quietness that also exists inside you. And when you're connected with that quietness, there's a lot more room for whatever it is you're feeling. Yeah? That quietness is the thing that feels like it contains everything. It's like a vessel that has the ability to contain anything and everything. So whenever I connect with that sense of stillness, that quietness, it reframes a sense of feeling to myself being something to fix, to myself being something to experience.
not reaching for your journal, just sitting.
Not reaching for my laptop to get like a rifle to just put to Netflix.
Literally, even
just anything.
Even as a song.
Yeah. I love that type of feeling can be that. It was really tense. I think it's like, you know what? Even that sense of frustration and impatience, let us sit here with it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hello, my friend. How are you? In stillness. And I look at you. I don't have to engage you. I'm just here with you to hold your hand. We don't have to talk. Just be. And then you're here for a while. And then maybe sometimes some tears will come and you'll be like, and then a part of you is in pain. And then maybe another part is just bored out of its pain. And then sometimes compassion will come, but then sometimes, a lot of the time when I sit in silence, more often than not, I think one of the most consistent things is I start, people who I really like come to me and they're like, how are they? How is money? How is that? How is that? Or someone I haven't thought about in a while, and then it's like just the need to recall and check up on them usually pops into my mind. I like the way it creates space, above all things. Space, and the space is a foundation in which you can then decide what you want to build. You can build. And in that spaciousness, you can then decide about the patterns that you want to build. When I create space that way, that's when I decide that I do want to connect to my body.
And that's also very important because I think a lot of us, myself included, fall into patterns versus what you say, that silent sitting with yourself gives you the ability to just decide, okay, I'm good at this, I'm not good at this is a pattern I want to continue, this is a pattern I want to stop, something I want to enjoy occasionally, this is something. I think that just being able to sit with yourself and have a conversation with yourself and be like, okay, or no, maybe not even conversation, just realization within yourself.
I get more realizations than conversations.
Yeah. Just have realizations about yourself that maybe now in the future develop into you questioning things and making up decisions about your life and how you're going to live it, whether it's big ways or small ways.
Recently, what happened is the decisions come as a response to feeling. So let's say recently I've been meditating a lot more, sitting in silence, sitting with myself a lot more. And then that created more of a sense of space and connection. And then, but it also created a much stronger sense of awareness of what I actually feel. And then let's say I ended up binge watching a series that I'm not that into, but I'm just doing it because because you've been watching season 1 and 2 already, but you're not that into it. And then you notice how you're feeling, and then I'm suddenly more in tune with a sense of sensation from being at ease to suddenly being slightly less at ease. And then it's like, do I really want to do this if this is how it's making me feel? And when I'm around certain people, I'm much more aware of how I'm actually feeling. If I'm having a cigarette and now I've quit, I realize, like, do I actually really enjoy this? And you're paying attention really closely to how you're feeling. And that awareness of how you're feeling grows. And then I do yoga, and then sometimes I'm not enjoying the exercise, but then I realize that every time I'm engaging it, I actually feel really, really nice, And then suddenly I'm going towards it, not because I think I should exercise, but because I recognize that I actually feel really nice whenever I'm doing it. And then when I wake up in the morning, I really start saying, let's go do that because I know how I'll end up feeling through it. I can really see the effect, You know? Yeah.
That's good.
It's a space, the awareness that space brings.
I'm sitting and thinking. But wow, okay. I don't even want to pivot from here, but let's pivot just a little bit. How do you think doing these things helps you create? And just that sitting in just in that silence with yourself. I don't know if that helps you create or not. Or maybe I should phrase it as the different emotions you've been experiencing recently in life and the different mind states and mind frames you're in. How are you able to create, or how are you not able to create? How does it affect your creativity? Whether it's good or bad.
I've been able to create from many different states and many different times. But now I'm not in a period of creating, but I can tell there's a blockage that's happening. So, in honesty, I actually don't know. I don't know if how I used to create, like let's say a year ago before, is exactly the same way how I'll be creating from now moving into the future. I don't think I've changed that much. So moments of insight is where I create from. Yeah. And then I pivot from that. It's usually like a lightning strike of an idea. And then that afterglow thing I follow. Yeah. So there's like excitement of the lightning strike of interactions with people and myself that usually creates ideas and insights, and then that's what I follow. But there's always been that sustained surge of flow from that. But usually it comes in places, in times when I'm feeling very connected with myself. Yeah. So I'm so sorry. I don't really know how to fully answer this question.
I do have a question for you. It's okay.
I just say it. I'm wondering to myself, how the hell do I create? This is a point in my life right now. Whether I've been going through a particularly low disconnected period creatively, where now I've just been making more space to allow myself to feel. Because I realize when there's so much fear, the fear can be able to cripple you, but the only thing you can do is allow your fear to be there. At a certain point, you just have to be able to sit with it. Yeah. But then it always feels like this. Whenever I lose the ability to create, when I'm in a place of loss, and when I feel lost, it's almost as though the memory of what it was like to be creative is completely gone. Yeah. Then when I'm trying to remember, what the hell was it like to be like creative, and like what the hell was I feeling in those periods? It's like the memory is kind of there, but it's so vague and it's so distant. But then when I really connect back to that flow, that creative flow, and I've done this so many times, connecting, disconnecting. When I reconnect, it's as though there's a network of memories, a constellation of memories, which are suddenly made available. And then, but I know it's not really lost, it's just the way I'm interpreting them, the way I'm connecting with them. And then suddenly, not only do I remember how to connect to it now, I remember how to connect to it, how I connected to it in the past. Yeah. And I find that often that tends to be the case between connection and disconnection. Whenever you're more in the mindset of disconnection, a lot of the disconnection tends to become quite rife into many other areas, into memories of what it is like to love, what it's like to connect, what it's like to connect with this person and that person and this and that. Yeah. It's the tangibility of it gets lost. Yeah. But the more connected I am, the more tangible these other memories become. But I think right now my particular journey is to be okay with the disconnection and the connection, not to be so reliant, to be in a place where I remember to connect, yeah, that I can be able to trust that the elements that I need, the ingredients are still here. And that maybe if I don't remember how I use the ingredients to make certain flavor palettes, like I did last time, then maybe I can be able to create new flavor palettes that are very different. Yeah.
I think as creatives, we're often told when we're in a state where we're having a creative block, or in a state where we're just not being able to create as easily as we used to, but we'll just pick up a pencil and draw, or just pick up, you know what I mean? Like, just do it.
Oh yeah, I like that. It's that thing is inspiration always follows action. Yeah. I think of waiting for inspiration, but it never works. Yeah.
What I want to know is how can we be comfortable in the moments where we are uninspired, where we are not being so creative? How have you been able to build that with yourself? Because I'm seeing it's something you're currently going through. It's really hard as a creative to not be creating, right? And I know we all go through moments like those as creatives, but how can we be okay with that?
You sit with it. I think it comes back to that story that you were saying about you in school. When you are too attached to your idea of yourself as a creator, you get too attached to the idea of your worth being diminished when you're not creating. Then it puts so much pressure on the need to create. More often than not, I find letting go of that and being okay with yourself not creating right now, or with this current status quo, I think, is to imagine that maybe you were not necessarily meant to be a creator. That narrative, that story that you're only worthwhile when creating, I think that is the only problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
It creates this pressure within yourself saying that let me put it this way. Your creativity. You need to be my friend.
Yeah.
It's not insistence. Yeah. It's like, why are you not doing the thing?
Yeah.
And then you're shaking.
Yeah.
And then saying, why are you not doing the thing? Come, let's do the thing. It's like you're calling your friends to come have a really lovely hangout with you because you've had really lovely hangouts in the past. But then now you're being really, really fucking intense, saying, we need to do the thing.
Now.
Come, let's tell a funny joke now. Haha. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you just relax, and I think in that process of relaxing, that process of letting go, that process of allowing yourself to settle into just having an authentic connection with those aspects of yourself, to let go of the fears of what this person, this creativity is meant to be like and what it's not being like, yeah? To be able to see it for what it is and to be able to say, hey, come over. I have a game we can play, or like, let's cook and whatnot, yeah? And not being so fucking intense if they're not exactly what you remember them to be.
Yeah.
Yeah? And then you ride back into the flow of enjoying their company and enjoying yourself around them and them around you. I think it's that intensity that tends to be the difficulty to get past. And that intensity comes from those emotions of, but who the fuck am I without this? And I'm being lazy today because I'm not creating. I haven't created in 3 months, or my income is like relying on this or whatnot. I think then that aspect of removing that tension or working through that tension or being allowing to see that tension there and letting it go now looks different for different people. Some people, it might mean a lot more quiet time. Some people, it means going out of the house and seeing exhibitions and like getting all these parts of you to like relax by seeing other people's creativity. Some people it's exercise. Some people it's sit down and let go of what you're thinking about and do the thing. For me, what has often helped is doing something creative in an entirely different field. Like when you say the piano, the jewelry is not working, then I end up creating an event or playing piano or doing something else entirely different, or at some point it was painting I was doing for like 2 months because like I hated jewelry, and then painting was a thing for a while because it had no expectations.
How do you think collaboration fits into all of this? And I feel like, I know initially my question was supposed to be collaboration fits into your creation, but I feel like even just into you as a human, especially since you mentioned like you and your friends going through this book together. So you could answer a question with the idea of collaborating with your friends to just be, or collaborating with other creators to create. How does it fall into place in your life?
I like this feeling of ingredients, the flavor palette. The flavor palette that gives you moments of being, this moment of being you here and now includes this particular set of ingredients, these flavors, these sensations that come together to give this one grand and awesome or subtle sensation of what it's like to be you here and now. So I see it as, it can often feel like you're including new sensations and new ingredients of what these other people are bringing, whether it be insights, things that can be able to expand more than what you can be able to bring to yourself now. I'm trying to answer this answer for you, give you this answer that's also different for myself, because I think it'd be easy for me to say like, oh, let's bring different perspectives of, so people can be able to bring different perspectives, but they want to look at it from the wider experience of you're alive now, and you're alive for a while, and you'll have certain experiences, and then there'll be different people who come into your life with different experiences. It's what's the sensation of being alive now, and what new aspects, what different aspects can different people bring to augment what your natural experience is like, and how can you be able to augment their experience, what it's like to be alive now, to create this thing now. Because it's also all right to kind of create for yourself, and to create by yourself. But then it never will be anything like what it'll be like when they're in the picture. And if you enjoy it, if you enjoy the sensation of them being with you, and then you co-creating this experience, then it's something you enjoy. And if it's not, don't do it.
Yeah. Collaboration is not your thing, it's okay.
Yeah. If it's not your thing for now, because I think it's like a moment to moment, yeah? Collaborating with someone now is not the same 2 months from now and a year from now, depending on how they're feeling and how you're feeling and where you are and where they are. And it's like an expression of this particular moment and their particular moment. And it's all combined to be able to create this particular sensation of being here now together, and then expressed into this thing that you're making. Yeah.
How do you think your loved ones have helped you, held your hand through your struggles with depression?
The biggest way, I think 2 ways. The biggest ways is 2. One, the friends of mine who see my light, who witness my fire, who witness what I'm actually like, and remember that through my lows. Because the biggest thing about your lows is you forget your light, you forget your fire, you forget how brilliant you are and can be, and you forget what that expression is like. So having people around you who are not going to reduce you the same way you're reducing yourself, is the biggest thing. Or they'll look at you in your low and then you will say something very, very stupid about how you feel like a failure or you are a failure, and then they look at you and like, but you're not. But they're not saying it to convince you. They're saying it because they see your truth and have always seen your truth. And having people like that is the most important thing. Yeah.
It's so true. I think when I was depressed, something that, so I'm gonna give you 2 perspectives. There's this one. I was depressed when I was in school, so teachers have play a lot in that story. But there's this one teacher who I had. I would be so anxious to enter his classroom. Like, I'd stand at the corner before I get to where like they can see me from the class and just tell myself, Aisha, it's okay, just go inside, just go inside, just go inside. Then there's once I think I was late on some assignment or something, and I go and I'm like, you listen, I'm so sorry, I wasn't able to do it. Like, I have a lot going on, da 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 da. And he just went off on me. There weren't that many people in the class left, there were like 3 people, but I was just like, I'm too fragile for us to be having this interaction right now. So I listened. I said, cool. Walked into the class. I went to my next class. I went to the washroom and I just cried because I didn't have the capacity to hear that. But then I remember also in that season, I had people in my life who were like, oh, Aisha, you're so this or you're so that. And they'd affirm me quite a bit. And I don't think I always believed it. Actually, I don't think I believed it at all in that season of life. But even just hearing it, you know how people say affirm yourself even if you don't believe it? Hearing it helps. Because it's like, okay, at least you have something to hold on to. I had a friend who knew me before depression and then during the depression while I was at that school. And that was the one person who always said, Aisha, you're such a happy person. Aisha, you're always laughing. Aisha, you're always this. Or, oh, Aisha, you know, when you did thing XYZ, it really brought life into my light. I mean, light into my life. And I think those people, the person who helped me do my hair when literally I could care less about anything because I didn't value myself in that moment, those are the people who really did keep me going versus the one who was putting me down and pushing me down even further. I don't know, I feel like if you have someone like who's going through a tough season, like just holding their hands and not adding more pressure to whatever they're already going through is like super important, because that can completely like deflate them, like totally. Because in that season, if those people didn't say the things they said, and if they didn't do some of the things they did, like my friend who used to help me do my hair sometimes, I really would have been, I don't know if I would have come out of it as quickly. And definitely people would have not seen me smile at all, leave alone the less that I was smiling. Because the people who experienced me in that season of my life know a very different version of Aisha than I think anyone else has ever experienced. So even them being able to just walk me through that was really important. And I think I'd just say, like, I don't know, every person goes through mental health struggles in different ways. But just taking someone a cup of soup, man, can really brighten their day. Yeah, I just wanted to say that just in case anyone is wondering, like, just be a friend, hold somebody's hand, like literally, and
so the artifacts of love.
Yeah, love them.
It's the small ones and the big ones, but especially these small ones and what love leaves behind. You know, it's
what love leaves behind.
Yeah. Because it's often hard that the highlight of depression is a lack of love, the disconnection from it, and the way you're saying, it's not for people to convince you, but to often if they leave enough trails of that love behind and these effects, like it's enough of them that you can be able to find. Even if you want to ignore quite a number of them, you'll still find a few. Be like, okay.
I guess I have to.
And then slowly you can be able to, like, it's an interesting thing a friend told me. There was a breakdown I was going through, and in that breakdown, I had forgotten about the love that I had inside me, and it felt as though there was nothing left. And I was wondering, there's nothing left to give. But in the love that they were giving me at the time, it felt undeserved, because when you're really in a place of lovelessness, you don't feel like you deserve it because you don't feel like you had it to give it in the first place. But then they reminded me of the love that I'd been giving, of these same artifacts of love, these trails that you've been leaving behind. And I don't know, when you're saying that, you're making me think about the trails that we leave, even if we lose faith in the fact that we've been leaving them. That cup of soup you're saying, that maybe someone will be giving you, there's so many times that you have been doing that.
For someone,
and many times not even intentionally, you know?
I hear that, and it's important. The love, love is all you usually need to keep going. And
these expressions of love can be really powerful. It's funny you say that, because now I'm wondering about expressions of love in the way I create. Not love in grand gestures, but as, like, grand statements of the human condition. But expressions of love, let's say, as appreciation. Appreciation is love. Appreciation for the texture of being, the textures of the other people's being. Appreciation for what people do. Appreciation for a meal, for the way the sun has come out, for the way the rain has come back, and the smell of, what's that word? Petrichor in the air. That's a word I remember this week when it started to rain again. That moist smell of rain in the air. The look of a cat, my neighbor's cat, as he comes and rubs against my legs, and I'm like, leave me alone. And I'm like, okay, but it looks sweet enough. Then you have a moment of it quiet, it's like, hi.
And you're like, okay, I guess you're kind of cute.
I think these are like much smaller traces of love, these artifacts, but I think the more we connect with them, I'm now wondering for myself what that means for creativity. Like connecting to them more intentionally and seeing how I connect that to what I consider creative expression. That it's not so much an expression of my being, but an expression of these moments of appreciation. And what they combine, what kind of flavor they combine to create the flavor of being now,
I hear that. We're about to wrap up, but I'm wondering, how are you able to keep coming back to the joy? Every low you've had, every maybe cycle of depression, how are you able to, every time you've been lost, how are you able to keep coming back, finding the light, finding the sunshine, finding the joy?
Reconnecting with that love. That's how.
Reconnecting with that love.
Love in the small ways. That gratitude for being, gratitude in all the small things. Gratitude, whether it be in conversations I have with friends who are loving with me, and riding those waves in conversations with them, and then being so much more acquainted with what that love feels like. For them, with them, from them, to them, all these different ways. Being acquainted with the love of being in my body, of what it's like to stretch into different mudra postures and to feel the nuances of my emotional flow change and transform. And then having more faith in what that transformation and change is like. And not just having more faith, having much more of an openness to the full spectrum of what I'm feeling. Because I think the thing that scares us is the idea of permanency when depression kicks in or something like that. The idea that this is it, yeah. But we're much more open to both our darkness and light when we're much more open to that sense of flow, that sense of we are not always the same, that sense of things being able to change and transform, and us being able to participate in what that transformation feels like. So it's not a dreadful prison, but a dance. Yeah. In this, my love for the taste of food grows. And with that, the love expands into what silver feels like as it bends into having an idea of a particular form in my mind, and that form feels pleasing. And then I want to participate in that process of it coming to life, of having an idea for a party, or having a conversation with someone, and in that conversation, and simply enjoying that, ideas come into being because I'm enjoying the nuance of them and of me and these words and these sensations, you know. I think I'm thinking of love as appreciations for the nuance of being, and the different ways it flows, and the increased capacity of that. And I think what I'm learning to do is to be able to more intentionally write those flows. When I lose it, and then I get it back. Maybe that's what I've been learning how to do in losing it and gaining it, knowing how exactly to do that at will. How to choose the appreciation as opposed to waiting for it to naturally happen.
Because it's a choice.
But it's not as gratitude as you must be grateful for this life that you're having, but it's that slow and gentle falling in love with what it's like to be alive, and you, and here, and the rain, and this, this room, and meeting, Shaa. I'm thinking of you, Shaa. Switching to Shaa Ciku.
It's okay.
Do you know what it's like you are noticing the denim that you're wearing, and this outfit, and the warmth of this room, and the apple juice that you brought me, it was so tasty, and then taking a moment there, the questions that you ask, and that one when you're talking about the joy that you think of me, and I was thinking, and then hearing about your journey, and the closer to that, I think the better. But the closer to that means that you're not just open to look creativity as it's not just necessarily expressing joy, but being able to express the full spectrum of your being, including the sadness, and you're able to step into that sadness with an openness. And this boy who hurt me one time, and I was in so much pain, but I wasn't able to sleep. There was like so much insomnia. It was so bad. I was just so angry, so freaking angry, And I tried so many ways to avoid it, like to watch series or watch it. It's like, what's it, like Planes in the Sky, I tried to drink it or something like that. You try to do whatever way, And then I ended up sitting down and writing a poem to just pour it out. It was the most intentional way of, I think it was both an appreciation for the way words can be able to express how I feel, and I don't like writing in prose, so this was like poem form, but at the same time appreciation for the nuance of what I was feeling. And one of the best poems I've ever written just flowed forth out of that experience, and I was able to sleep right afterwards. But it's that it came from an openness, and that openness came from that appreciation of wanting to taste into it, of wanting to taste words, of having appreciation. Does it make sense what I'm describing?
I'm understanding.
Yes. So, yeah.
That's that.
Yeah.
Wow. Our conversation has touched me. And I think you even put into words a lot of things I think I've not been able to put into words about creativity, about mental health. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much much, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing a little bit of that light with us. I'm sure people have seen you smile and laugh, and they're like, okay, I get it. I hear it. You see, you even have a little bit of sunshine in your hair. I don't know if you noticed.
That was intentional.
It was intentional? Okay. But yeah, thank you. I genuinely appreciate it, and I'm sure someone listening will too. So thank you for coming. You're welcome. I just want to say thank you guys for listening. Thank you for giving us some of your time. Thank you for allowing us to impact each other. Just before we go, I'd like to say thank you to a number of people who've helped this come to be. Firstly, Brian, who you can find his page at brian.kivuti on Instagram. I'd also like to say thank you to Floral at Kenya on Instagram, the ones who helped me with beautiful flowers. Working with them for creative direction, Tamid Creations, who are always supporting us. I also want to say thank you to the team behind the scenes, the team behind the cameras, which is Angaza Films and Dynamic Pictures Kenya, for just the entire production of this. And thank you to myself. So you guys can also go follow me at Shaa_Ciku on Instagram. And please connect with us on our social media platforms, Stories of Impact _Shaa Ciku. Let us know what you thought about this podcast, this episode, anything that you just connected with. Tell us your story as well. Maybe you impact somebody in the comments. And just thank you for sharing this moment with us. Love and light. Bye.
Bye.